Or if they're sort of unity church, I don't know how well you know about the New Thought people. It's too specific for them. It's too New Thought it tends to prefer philosophic ideas and not specifics about history and cosmology, and it's just not their bailiwick. But let's go back to your original question if you want to restate that.
Yeah, what did I ask again? I think I asked basically about... Well, actually, let me ask this first. Let me move on here a little bit. If it's been around since 1955, and any religion, again, maybe you don't want to see it this way, but if there is a creation of a new ideas, new thought, etc., and in a way a new religion, it always takes a lot of time, of course. But let's say 1955 publishing of it. Why do you think it's not more popular today? Why has it not caught on more in the mainstream?
My view of that is it's pretty elaborate, and that's because I was around since 1974. I happen to be in the city of its origin in Chicago as a student at the University of Chicago, so I got to meet some of the original people at the headquarters of the Urantia Foundation. And what I found was that they had a split in the regard to the sort of the marketing and advertising of this. There was a minority group that wanted to do traditional advertising and marketing, and the majority group, their view was that we should be word of mouth. It's sort of like Alcoholics Anonymous. It would be by attraction, not by promotion. Mm-hmm. And so that group won out. However, the problem with that group is that they were fairly isolated, and they were elderly, and they had experienced so much rejection in the 50s and 60s that they were kind of at a loss of what to do. And by the time I ran into them in the 70s, they didn't really have a plan. They were just like, what do we do now? And the younger group that I was part of were questioning and saying, well, what do we do? And so that group is the group that worked this out. And they very slowly came around to basically what I'm doing, which is publishing secondary works about it, setting up some advertising and getting people out to speak about it and that sort of thing. But it's been very slow. And I also got to tell you, Henrik, that I have my own personal conspiracy theory about this.
Sure. Well, tell us. I'd like to hear it.
It's just mine, and it's nobody else's. And it's, I've been around quite a long time, and I've engaged in with the field of deep politics and published books in that field. And in fact, I helped put on a major conference on deep politics in 2008, and I'm very conversant with it. And I really think that the Urantia book has been actively suppressed in high places. I don't have sort of smoking gun evidence, but I have circumstantial evidence of it. And we're talking about just throughout the media, in publishing circles, in seminaries. I think there's been an active, conscious suppression, and I think that emanates from the groups that the Urantia book is describing when it describes the prehistory going back to its satanic roots. And in the Urantia book, in more than anywhere I've ever seen, is a clear and clean description of who these bloodlines are, how they originated, and how they operated. And so it's describing who they are and who their chief celestial was that they worshipped, Lucifer, and presents that in such a way that it's unmistakable who this is, what this is. And I think those are the groups behind the scenes that were suppressing the Urantia book.
Very interesting. You know what? Let's get into that right now. Let's get into the rebellion of Lucifer, what happened there, and what the book says about this, because we want to try to understand, of course, our prehistory to try to unravel some of the issues that we are faced with today. What does the book say about Lucifer? What character he was, and what happened, basically?
Okay, so Lucifer. So I've given some of the cosmology for background, so that folks can try to get a handle on this. Now, Lucifer is in the celestial hierarchy at the level of what they call the local system. So I've mentioned briefly that you have what's known as local universe, which is up to 10 million inhabited planets, and it has a celestial administration. And then the smallest administrative unit of a local universe is known as a local system, which is up to 1,000 inhabited planets. And its angelic administration is headed up by a being of the order that Lucifer was. And I won't get into the name of that. It's a little arcane, but beings of that, celestial beings of that order are administrators who oversee the celestial hierarchy of these planets in a local system. And there's an awful lot that goes into that, and part 3 of the Urantia Book explains that in some detail. But in any case, these are high beings who are specially chosen and specially trained to manage millions of celestial beings who are in turn managing planets, inhabited planets. They're not just managing, they're ministering to. They're loving, their ministrations are loving. But there's other things that they do, such as in the realms of biology, for example, that we can get into. But in any case, Lucifer was at a level in the celestial hierarchy where there's a possibility that a celestial being can get the idea that there's something amiss, not amiss, but something that they can't quite see far above them, because there's this teaching that there's a central universe wherein God the Father resides, and that in his stead there's a local being, local creator beings I mentioned before, who are the creators of the local universe, and who have this huge mission to take human beings into an eternal life career so that they can ascend into the central universe. I haven't mentioned that, but that's what eternal life is supposed to be according to the Urantia Book. There's an ascension. Mm-hmm. And so these local celestials don't really see this very much. They're local. And so in very rare 1 in a million cases, they can get the idea that there's some kind of control system above them, and they can begin to question it and then eventually rebel. And so Lucifer went off the rails because he began to question the administrator, what I like to call the multiverse, the higher universe administration, because he couldn't really discern what was really going on. He had to take it on faith, and he rejected that faith.
So he began. Sorry to interrupt, but he was unhappy with his role, basically, what he was meant to do then, in a way.
Correct, exactly, because he felt that it was kind of a waste of time to manage, not so much a waste of time, but it was not an efficient use of time to manage planets in the way they were doing it. And the way they were doing it was very, very incremental. And that is really one of the great messages of the Urantia Book, which is that evolution is the supreme activity in time-space universe, but it's very slow, very incremental. In fact, you can see that when you understand that it says the physical universe is 1 trillion years old. That's a lot slower in its evolution than the 13.7 billion years old. So, Lucifer's watching this very slow unfolding of these planets, which are his wards, and very slow evolution of life and very slow evolution of humans over eons, and begins to think this is just an administrative superstructure that's getting its kicks, telling us what to do down here. We can do it better, and we will do it better. And he had certain prerogatives which permitted him to override what was being done from the higher realms. And so he then went around to his subject planets, trying to convince the angelic hierarchy of these planets to go with his new plan, the Lucifer plan. And but of those planets, there are a little bit over 600 in our local system. Only 37 went over to his side.
So sorry to interrupt again, but just to reiterate this point, the basics that we get of the story in mythology, and partly this is coming from the Bible, but also interpretation and other texts as well. But the basics of that story is basically correct, and then the Urantia book is basically is more descriptive than what we've heard before. Is that correct?
Much more, because if you look at Genesis, for example, which speaks of the just in a few lines, and I'm sure you know about this well, of the renowned men of old who went into the daughters of men and kind of created a hybrid race.
Yep.
And all of that, and the Nephilim and these giants that they speak of very briefly in the Bible. This story is the result of the Lucifer rebellion on our planet Urantia, wherein now I have to kind of go off on sort of the planetary aspect of the rebellion, if you like.
Oh, sure.
So here on our planet, every planet has a planetary chief administrator. And the chief administrator of our planet, I'm just using a generic term, the chief administrator of our planet was named Caligastia. And Caligastia was convinced by the Lucifer manifesto to go over to the dark side. And so in so doing, the whole planet administration swung over with him. And what was happening at that time was, remember earlier, Henrik, we talked about the earlier revelations that were completely lost.
Yep.
So, there's a lot of legends and sort of, if you look at the story of the Anunnaki, deciphered from the Sumerian cuneiform tablets, by a number of people, and specifically Sitchin. There is, in Sitchin's work and in other interpretations, there were these gods that descended at some point, and in these legends, which are in Sumerian cuneiform tablets, but in many other civilizations, that these gods came down, and then there's what you might call the combat myth, that there was warfare between them. And so the Urantia book, goes on for a couple hundred pages telling you what that was. And what that was is that there was an administration of beings who had incarnated 500,000 years ago. Now, Sitchin places it about 500,000 years ago, so there's a big correlation there. And this group were beings who had been specifically designed to appear like human beings, but they were actually off-planet beings who took on bodies using actually the DNA from local tribes, and they constructed bodies and forms for these persons, these off-planet persons, who were kind of planetary missionaries. And there were 100 of them who incarnated 500,000 years ago near an area near the Persian Gulf, near the current country of Bahrain, and created a city there which was to be the planetary capital. And there is in archaeology a city named Dilmun, which was a later evolution of this city. And it was here that the rebellion caused a tremendous degeneration of what had been built up there. So let me slow down here and let you ask me a question about it, because it's an elaborate story.
Very, very interesting. Now, let's backtrack a little bit here and just want to ask you again what actually Lucifer wanted to do. What did he want to speed up the process of evolution and effectively kind of take over as the head administrator of Earth or Urantia, or what did he want to do, really?
Yeah, what he wanted to do, first of all, his manifesto said that there really is no God. There's no God, there's no deity. It was an atheist teaching. So that's a huge, huge rebellion. And secondly, that this superstructure that was controlling evolution through administrators like himself, was not skillful the way that the locals could be. It was sort of like the idea of local control of your politics, you might say. Mm-hmm. And so we were going to do it better. And the way we're going to do it is by not paying so much attention to the